The Last Word with Antonia Hilton in for Lawrence starts right now, and I hope she had a snack or a coffee or both. Hello
I
again,
had a
Antonia.
snack. It's been too long, Jen. So good to see you.
It's great to see you again, too. Thank you. Have a great show.
Thank you. We are now 169 days into Donald Trump's war in Iran. And what we still don't know is how long is it going to last? And what is the cost to the American service members being asked to fight it? 18 service members have been killed in the 169 days since Trump's war began. And the USS Abraham Lincoln, based at Naval Air Station North Island in San Diego, has been deployed for nearly 9 months. No port calls, no chance to touch land or see loved ones. And we're hearing increasingly disturbing reports about the conditions aboard the carrier for the 5,000 sailors and Marines, including broken toilets, food shortages, an intensifying mental health crisis, and sailors who still don't have a clear sense of when they're coming home. And the reality is there's no clear picture of when they can come home because there's no clear end to this spiraling conflict. And there was never a clear, convincing story for why this administration started it. Today, Acting Secretary of the Navy, Hung Cao, said in a statement, quote, "The USS Abraham Lincoln crushed their deployment and will return home soon as part of a planned rotation. Details will come, but let me be clear. The safety and security of our sailors and Marines always comes first. Mission accomplished, troop welfare. This is how we lead." Unfortunately, the media are trying to paint our warriors as victims. Not only is that dishonest, but it takes away the focus on the enemy and the threat it poses against our nation, people, and way of life. Acting Navy Secretary Cao continues saying, quote, "It is also true a small number of mental health cases were treated with no loss of life. Meal plans were adjusted when fresh resupply was unavailable without a single meal being missed. Calls home were limited when the operational threat was too high." It is worth underlining there that the Trump administration is proud of the fact that active duty service members deployed in Trump's war, American service members in 2026, they're receiving regular meals without a single meal being missed. A very low bar. The acting secretary's statement comes after MS Now reported, quote, "A sailor who jumped off the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier last week was in water for about an hour before he was rescued," his wife told MS Now on Thursday in an exclusive interview. The wife, who was granted anonymity to describe sensitive mental health issues, says she was not contacted by Navy officials about the incident until 4 days after her husband jumped off the ship on August 3rd. In the last text exchanges she had with her husband on July 21st, before he went overboard, messages she shared with MS Now, her husband said he felt the boat was finally getting to him. One text message read, "I think the boat is finally getting to me, and I really don't think I can keep up my peace act anymore. You are right about it all not being okay. We were supposed to leave 5th Fleet on July 15th, but then something had to come up and my last hope of being home soon was gone. I'm really trying to not feel negative or hopeless. But between the Wi-Fi and not knowing when I will come home and not knowing what is happening back home, it's really getting me. I really don't think I can do another deployment after this, and I don't even know if I can finish this deployment." The wife said her husband went to his chain of command and the medical team on that ship and expressed concerns about his mental health and reportedly told them he was not doing okay. The wife said her husband said they kept brushing him off. Donald Trump today said he doesn't think those American service members fighting his war in Iran have been out there long enough.
I have to say,
Family members of U.S. service members are concerned about the conditions on board the USS Lincoln.
well, no, that ship is moving. No, they're not. That ship is moving right now, or very shortly, and it's being replaced with another very similar ship.
Has the deployment's gone on too long?
No. Not nearly long enough. Thank you, everybody.
Congressman Jason Crow, who served 3 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan before being elected to the House of Representatives, was furious on social media. President Trump does not care about our service members or their families. Our next guest, California Democratic Congressman Mike Levin, has been pressing the Pentagon and the Navy for answers. Congressman Levin sent a letter yesterday to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and the acting Navy Secretary demanding answers about the conditions aboard USS Abraham Lincoln. He will join us in a moment on that. But here's what Donald Trump did today, on the 169th day of his war in Iran. Today, Trump asked the Supreme Court to intervene so that construction of his ballroom, which the Washington Post says is estimated to cost $600 million, mostly from taxpayers, can continue. Trump's Solicitor General John Sauer wrote in his filing that a, quote, 250-person crew is working 20 hours a day, 7 days a week to keep the project ahead of schedule and under budget. Today, the project is 65% complete in its entirety and moving quickly toward total completion. That follows Donald Trump taking time to join the Kennedy Center board meeting, too, yesterday to push through a vote to somehow put his name back on that building. Donald Trump, a wartime president, continues to be completely focused on the progress of a ballroom and on putting his name on a building. And it's not really just the buildings. Now, Trump is also weighing in on the design of future aircraft carriers for some reason. Trump ordered the Navy to bring back steam catapults on future aircraft carriers. That's completely outdated technology the Navy has moved away from in favor of course, newer electromagnetic systems. The Wall Street Journal reports that it's a move Navy officials have been fighting for years and that it will likely cost billions of dollars. And how did Donald Trump, who never served in the Navy at all and who's not an engineer, make this decision? Well, the Journal reports by doing so, Trump is making good on a promise he made almost 10 years ago to go back to the steam system after hearing a sailor praise it while visiting a ship during his first term. So he heard some sailor praise it a decade ago. At least he's doing his research. Here's what Senator Mark Kelly told my colleague Jen Psaki about this last night.
So I was a test pilot that worked in certifying the takeoff and landing systems for aircraft carriers, and I have a master's degree in aeronautical engineering and a bachelor's degree in marine engineering. Not in any world would I ever suggest to the Navy to change the design of some system on a ship at this point. I mean, does the guy know nothing about the way our government is supposed to work and how it's supposed to be managed? For him to get in these details, especially with his background, I mean, what is his background? He's a marginally failed real estate developer, right? With multiple bankruptcies. He shouldn't be weighing in on systems on aircraft carriers.
And what else did the, quote, marginally failed real estate developer with multiple bankruptcies, to borrow a phrase from Senator Kelly there, do today? He told American voters it's okay if they have to pay $4 a gallon for gas.
For you to pay a tiny little bit more for your gasoline, just remember you're doing it so that a very evil country cannot have, a country really, it's the number one state sponsor of terror in the world. We don't want to have them have a nuclear weapon. So remember that when you have to pay a little bit more, you're at $4. It's okay. I mean, it's, I'll never apologize. I did the right thing.
Leading off our discussion tonight is Democratic Congressman Mike Levin of California. He's a member of the House Appropriations Committee. Congressman, it's good to see you this evening. I want to begin with, of course, I want to begin with what you're hearing about the conditions on the USS Abraham Lincoln from people that you have spoken to.
Well, you laid it out very well. I'm hearing from family members who are deeply concerned about the conditions. And just to be very clear, none of us expect for an aircraft carrier to be the Holiday Inn. We're not talking about, some sort of luxury lifestyle here. Our sailors and Marines expect hard conditions at times, but they also expect basic habitability. And that just gets down to readiness, being ready and prepared for whatever the mission is. The second thing I hear from our family members is that it's very unclear what the mission really is. When you have the President of the United States who's saying we've won the war in Iran a dozen times, well, at the same time, Secretary Hegseth basically calls the concerns of family members fake news. The Navy Secretary, I don't even know if the President has spoken to the Navy Secretary. He had a meeting with around 200 military families in San Diego about a week ago where those concerns were laid out very specifically. to him. And I don't know if Hung Kao has even briefed Donald Trump, because today to hear the totally cavalier attitude of the president, it was a shocking comment even for him. We've been accustomed to very, very shocking comments, but this one's right up there. It's really just a horrible situation for all involved.
Well, you mentioned that meeting with the sailors and family members of sailors and Hung Kao, and you actually wrote a letter to Pete Hegseth, to Hung Kao, and I want to quote from it. While we appreciate this direct meeting with family members, we strongly believe the representing members of Congress of these families should have also been notified of this meeting, or at a minimum, receive some form of communication about the Navy's plans to rectify the immediate concerns aboard the USS Lincoln and to relieve the ship as soon as possible. Have you, since you sent that letter, received anything with clear guidance about exactly when they'll be relieved, any sort of resolution for the families, explanation for why their loved ones were subjected to conditions like these?
No, we haven't. And that's not surprising. We're still going to demand it. But, in the minority, it's tough. But when you have an administration that is hell-bent on disregarding the will of the Congress, totally ignoring the war powers authority of the Congress of the United States. And when you have my Republicans in the Congress who are unwilling to exercise oversight as required by the Constitution, that's a dangerous combination, because then the executive thinks that they can do virtually anything. And with these Republicans in charge, unfortunately, that has been right. We haven't received a classified brief of any significance on what's going on what the exit strategy is, on what the tactics are. And it looks as though this whole situation with regard to the Lincoln was avoidable. It has been reported now in the New York Times earlier this afternoon that it was, likely foreseeable that Iran could attack the hub in Bahrain, where the restocking would normally have occurred, where the infrastructure on board would have been improved, the plumbing and so forth. None of that happened, of course, because when the Iranians attacked Bahrain, there was no good plan B. And now Diego Garcia, which is 2,200 miles away, is the sort of, it's been created as the plan B, but it's been done with very little forethought. And it's example, again, Antonia, of a lack of planning and preparation and the incompetence of Pete Hegseth and the unwillingness of Donald Trump to do anything about that incompetence.
Well, I want your reflection, I guess, on what the broader consequences of this incompetence may be, because the war with Iran, it is maybe the major headline, but it is not the only place in which our military is engaged right now. And one of the things that I think about as I see the way in which clearly the sort of human cost of this war is now coming into full view. And then we also, of course, have this drumbeat of reporting around the way in which our munitions stockpile is also being depleted. The U.S. has, two sources sharing in an exclusive Reuters report that the U.S. has used virtually all of the Army's surface-to-surface weapons. Then a CNN report recently, the U.S. military has exhausted nearly 80% of its interceptors for a key missile defense system. And then you remember that Pete Hegseth has also this week been talking about expanding our presence all across the Western Hemisphere, joint task forces with countries like Colombia. Is our military and its resources, are they being spread too thin?
Well, it's certainly not for them asking us for, a small amount of money every year, Antonia. I sit on the Appropriations Committee, and their request was $1.15 trillion with another supplement that would add up to, another $350 billion. The reports are that they're going to keep at it, trying to get that $1.5 trillion, but it's a top line without any real specificity on, whether it'll do the job for the men and women who are serving. And when you think about readiness means that you have the tools and the training to get the job done, but it also means that you have a decent enough quality of life, that you have enough to eat, that your emotional well-being and your physical well-being is kept in mind. So it just seems like the priorities of this administration are totally out of whack. Where you have the president talk about a $1.5 trillion figure because he wants the U.S. to seem like the tough guys, but in reality, when you ask about the lived experiences of our service members, and when you hear from their families, many of whom are afraid to speak out because they know it'll lead to retribution, potentially retribution from this very vindictive administration. It just leads to a toxic stew. The arrogance mixed with the incompetence, Antonia, is, I think, why we're in this mess in Iran now, almost 6 months in, why we might have problems with munitions, why we're having trouble on the carriers. It all leads back to arrogance and incompetence. And it's a very, very dangerous combination.
Incredibly dangerous for us and for all of the people around the globe who depend on us. Congressman Mike Levin, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Coming up, who else was in the Kennedy Center virtual board meeting when Trump jumped on the call? Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, who sued Trump to remove his name from the center and won. She's going to join us with her reaction and the latest in keeping Trump's name off the building next. There's been much reporting about the new Kennedy Center board voting to quote-unquote inscribe Trump's name on the building after a federal judge had ordered it to be removed. You can see a tarp is still up over the name of the building. It seems as though Trump can't stand to take it down and might not want the world to see that he lost big time in that litigation. But it was not until last night on this show when Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who is one of the congressional members of the Kennedy Center board, told Lawrence that Trump himself jumped on the call.
Donald Trump jumped on the call and went on about the ballroom, how it is under budget, ahead of schedule, going to be entirely paid for by big corporations with no mention of the federal court order out of the D.C. circuit, saying that he has no right to build the ballroom.
Did you get a chance to ask Donald Trump any questions about this?
No, he came on. He said he had been listening. He gave the speech for several minutes, and then he hung up. His vote and his chief of staff, Susie Wiles's vote, were texted in on these things. He did not vote in person.
But Donald Trump did vote for his name to go on to the building and for the plaza around it to be called the Donald Trump Plaza.
Correct. And it was quite a long meeting. It was about 2 hours. He said he'd been on for most or all of it, which is interesting because you've got an economy in collapse. Mm-hmm. You have massive cost increases on Americans that are driving people crazy. You've got a war in Iran where he's floundering, if not losing. And he's got 2 hours to spend on a vanity project about getting his name onto a building. It's a little odd that he wouldn't take the big problems more seriously and spend his time on them.
And Senator Whitehouse also said that the original agenda for the meeting did not include any votes, and many members were not even in attendance. However, a measure was put up for a vote to honor Trump for his, quote, existential and unprecedented contributions to the survival of the center. I guess that would depend on your definition of the word contribution. He's attacked woke programming and pushed for more patriotism, installed loyalists who the reporting suggests created a completely chaotic work environment. And a shocking number of artists have canceled their appearances in their shows. And Donald Trump has now, of course, closed the Kennedy Center. The Trump allies on the board voted yesterday to close the center for 2 years for renovations, which would justify adding the inscription, restored and renovated by President Donald J. Trump under President Kennedy's name. Congresswoman Joyce Beatty is also a member of the board. She has been a relentless advocate for the Kennedy Center. She brought the successful lawsuit challenging the Trump-aligned Kennedy Center board decision to add Donald Trump's name in the first place that it got removed, as she has discussed several times here on this show, The Last Word. And Congresswoman Beatty was on the call yesterday when Trump jumped on. She put out this statement afterward. This latest development is a transparent effort to circumvent the court's ruling and flies in the face of the statutes that Congress passed. I will continue to fight for this treasured national monument. And joining me now, of course, is Democratic Congresswoman Joyce Beatty of Ohio, an ex officio member of the Kennedy Center's Board of Trustees, who was on that call yesterday. Congresswoman, we heard Senator Whitehouse's reaction there. So tell me, what did you think when Trump jumped on that call yesterday?
Well, first of all, thank you. And it was very interesting when he got on the call. It was announced that Donald Trump wanted to make some remarks to the board. He came on and he talked for several minutes about himself, about his vanity projects and why it was important for us to close the center, to renovate it, and having his name put on the board. What was very interesting is this was not an item on our agenda for us to vote on adding that inscription, which again, as I want everyone to know, it is unlawful. This was just another attempt by sycophants to be loyal to Donald Trump more than the rule of law. He made a few snide remarks about several of us. And then when he went off the call, he did say he had been listening the entire time. This was almost a 2-hour meeting. And when you think about where we are at war in Iran, when we think about people trying to make a difference between putting gasoline in their car to get to work or food on their tables or a roof over their heads, that we have a president that wanted to talk about ballrooms and what he's going to do for a center and brag on himself. It was very disturbing to me that with the country being in the situation it's in, that he took time to do this. But look, we're going to continue fighting. I am going to continue to stand up against what he's doing because it is unlawful. And on Tuesday, my lawyers will file a status report with the judge informing the court of what happened in this board meeting. We also are still in litigation. And so they cannot just automatically do this. And I am going to continue to be relentless in this fight, because that's what we have to do. When the American people are hurting so badly, what they're asking us to do is to stand up and fight. And we've been victorious in the past, so we will continue to protect the rule of law and stand up against Donald Trump and what he's doing because it's unlawful.
I wonder if you can tell me more of what you think is ahead in this fight to come, because it seems to me like there's a pattern here, of Trump sort of refusing to take no for an answer, whether it's on the Supreme Court decision around birthright citizenship. Now he's trying to find a workaround around that. Tariffs, of course, finding a workaround, new statutes to still move forward with that. And then in this case, it seems like this is a new way to get his name back on this building after he lost in this major litigation. And so walk me through whether or not this is really a violation of that original court order and what fighting back against this actually might take.
It definitely is a violation of the work order. And you said it best. He's trying to do a workaround by saying that he is responsible for the renovation of the center. And here's what happened. It was the United States Congress that put $257 million into a budget, into a bill that he did sign. Now, maybe he did his normal bullying to Speaker Johnson and Republicans to make it happen. So let's say he made it happen. We have $257 million for the renovation. But those are government dollars, taxpayers' dollars. And it is unlawful, again, for him to do what he is saying that he wants to do. So we will take it back to court, as we've done before. We will go back on Tuesday and file that joint report. We still are in litigation with the original unlawful violation that he made. So we are very confident that we have enough of a case to continue fighting against what he's doing. And they know it. The board members talked about there's a 14-day window. That means they can't do anything until we go back to court and get a decision on the things that we are already dealing with, including taking that tarp down. Now, he's put the tarp up there. He's continued to keep it up there because his ego can't take defeat. and we have defeated him. We have won in the federal court. We won in Washington's district court. I was there when the name came down at some almost 4:00 in the morning. So I assure the American people, the name is down, and we will continue to fight for justice.
Can I ask you, do you think the Kennedy Center will ever be the same?
I have to be hopeful. When you look at this being our only living memorial to John F. Kennedy and everything that he's done, and I want to remind everybody that the reason that we don't have the performers and the artists there now is because of Donald Trump, and he ran it into the ground. When he unlawfully put his name up on the Kennedy Center's building, the performers, because he made it political, they withdrew. And so that put us in a very difficult position because also it hurt the funding of it. And this was Donald Trump running it into the ground. So naturally, he wants to come back to save face, try to close it down. So the board did vote on one of the two plans. One was to do it partially over a 4-year period. They did vote. It only took 12 votes to make a quorum, although we have 40-some members on the board. There were people who were on that screen virtually that did not vote. And there were people who just didn't show up. But I think that the American people value the Kennedy Center, and we will be able to come back at some point and talk about how it is thriving and it's doing what the Congress intended it to do.
Yeah, I know there are many Americans waiting for that moment, looking for that reassurance. Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Coming up next, Donald Trump has another big renovation idea for the White House campus, and yet another lawsuit is trying to stop him before this big idea becomes a reflecting pool level disaster. Going to tell you about that next. All right, you will want to pay attention to this next segment. You may even want to record, clip, save it. Because Donald Trump has another renovation idea, and no, it is not the arch blocking Arlington National Cemetery. And no, it's not more Cheesecake Factory decor for the Oval Office or Rose Garden, but it could very easily become the next reflecting pool level renovation debacle. Trump's latest big idea is for the Eisenhower Executive Office Building, EEOB for short, which is this beautiful building right next to the West Wing, as you see in this picture. It's gray because granite is gray. At least the granite used in this building. Trump thinks it should be white, and so he wants to paint it. Here is the headline of the article in The Atlantic warning against this particular Trump renovation idea. Do not paint granite. Yes, exclamation point there. There wasn't a headline like that before Trump got the idea to have a pool guy turn the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool swimming pool blue. But as our next guest explains, we don't have to wait to test Trump's big new reno idea. We know right now it will not work. Joining us now is Dorothy Robin, former Commissioner of Public Buildings at the General Services Administration and a former Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Installations and Environment. Dorothy, that's a big title that I just laid out there, and I'm sure most of our audience, may not have heard of this role, this job before. So before I dive in here, can you just tell me a bit about what you did in that role?
Yeah, well, let me first say that I spent 8 years in that gorgeous building as a member of President Clinton's White House economic team. And I pinched myself every day that I worked in the OEOB, as we called it then, the old executive office building. That was Clinton. In the Obama administration, in the Pentagon, I oversaw military bases and all the related energy and environmental issues. So military bases all over the world. And then I was tapped to come to GSA. They'd had some problems, and I became, for a fairly brief period of time, the public building commissioner. So the person at GSA who oversees all federal buildings and leased space. And the EEOB is the crown jewel in GSA's building portfolio. It is a spectacular building. And so it was just a joy to be able to oversee this building that I had had an office in for 8 years.
So tell me, why is it not the best idea to just get out there and paint it white?
Well, first off, there's two reasons. The first is aesthetic and historic. This is a National Historic Landmark. This building, EEOB, is the fourth most important building in Washington, D.C., next to the White House, the Supreme Court, and the Capitol. It was built to house the State Department, the War Department, and the Navy. It was built right after the Civil War. And at the time, those three agencies, together with Treasury, which had its building on the other side of the White House, that represented the entire executive branch of the federal government. And those agencies were there for decades. It has an amazing history. 2 international conflicts were announced, 1,000 treaties signed during the time the State Department was there. 5 presidents worked in that building before they became president. I mean, the history is just incredible. So granite is a testament to granite. The architect, Alfred Mullett, actually sourced the granite from 2 different quarries, one in Virginia, one in Maine, so that he could achieve a particular aesthetic effect and highlight the features of the building. It's a very exuberant design. It's a French Second Empire design that Mullett thought captured the enormous optimism of the mood of America after the Civil War. Not everyone has liked it, but it is a study in gray purple granite.
Why can't you
so
paint
that's
it?
the first reason. I'm sorry.
Why can't you just paint it? If you're Trump and you no longer want it to be gray, why isn't that a good idea?
So this gets to the do not paint granite. Granite is very smooth. It is not porous. It doesn't hold paint. Granite is an expensive facade. It's used on the Library of Congress, old post offices, other iconic buildings. You don't have to do it. You have to do very little to maintain it. But if you make the mistake of painting, first you have to rough up the building to get it to take paint because it's non-porous. And then the paint traps moisture, and that leads to the deterioration of the building. So it destroys the stone. And then once you've painted it, you have to continue painting it every 5 to 7 years. So it's like the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. By the time you get done painting one end, it's time to start at the other end.
And you would think that someone who tells everyone that he's one of the greatest developers of all time would maybe know a little bit about this. Dorothy Robin, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your story with us tonight.
Thank you.
Coming up, Republicans are on defense in Texas. And if you think Ken Paxton has controversy problems, wait until you hear about the Republican Mike Johnson is trying to get elected to the House. That's next. Just 81 days to go until the midterm elections, and Republicans are playing defense in Texas. The latest polling has the Senate race between Democrat State Representative James Tallarico and Republican State Attorney General Ken Paxton virtually tied. Ken Paxton, who with Donald Trump's support beat Texas Senator John Cornyn in a primary, is already testing how much scandal Texas Republicans can take. The Daily Beast reports scandal-laden MAGA Senate hopeful Ken Paxton crumbled during a town hall meeting when he was asked why he cheated on his wife. The Texas Attorney General, 63 years old, who won a bruising Republican primary with Donald Trump's backing, was kicked out of the home he shared with his wife, State Senator Angela Paxton, after she accused him of adultery, according to a 2025 divorce filing she based on biblical grounds. During a teletown hall earlier this week, he fielded questions from the public. During one phone interaction, a woman was heard saying, "Nice to meet you," before asking, "I'm just wondering, why did you cheat on your wife?" Here's that moment and Paxton's reply.
Hi, Paxton. It's nice to meet you. I'm just wondering, why did you cheat on your wife?
I'm not going to talk about personal issues that relate to my family, just like I don't think you would want to discuss your marriage on a call with thousands of people.
Paxton's opponent, Democrat James Tallarico, dropped this TV ad today.
This is Ken Paxton. And this is Ken Paxton stealing someone's $1,000 pen. Here's what happened. The incident happened at the Collin County Courthouse, the same courthouse where Paxton would later be indicted for investment fraud. Paxton walked up to the trays next to the metal detectors, rummaged through them, and came across someone else's expensive Mont Blanc pen. He decided to take it for himself. The pen belonged to Joe Joplin, a local attorney who'd accidentally left it behind. After the police got involved, Joe got his pen back. He could have pressed charges, but he decided against it because Joe's a nice guy. He'd never take someone else's pen. But he also hasn't forgotten who took his.
Hi, I'm Joe Joplin, and I endorse James Tallarico for the United States Senate.
Vote for James Tallarico. He won't steal your pen.
And even with all of that in mind, Ken Paxton might not even be the most controversial Texas Republican running in 2026. Let me introduce you to the race for the U.S. House of Representatives in Texas's 23rd Congressional District, the West and South Texas District, which spans from El Paso all the way to San Antonio, was represented by former Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez, who you may remember resigned from office earlier this year after it was revealed he had an affair with an aide who later committed suicide. The person Texas Republicans chose to replace a Republican forced to resign is a man named Brandon Herrera, a YouTuber who goes by the AK Guy online. New York Times columnist Michelle Goldberg recently wrote this about Brandon Herrera. Because this is a family newspaper, I cannot quote the piquant term that Brandon Herrera, a Republican House candidate in Texas, used to refer to children in a 2023 video, nor, alas, am I allowed to repeat the obscenities that Herrera, a gun influencer, used to explain why the opinions of mothers are without value. I can, however, tell you about the Nazi and eugenics stuff. In a 2022 video, Herrera and a buddy in sunglasses and a balaclava tested a Nazi-era submachine gun, then goose-stepped to a Nazi marching song. Herrera called the weapon the original ghetto blaster. In a 2024 podcast, after calling for abolishing Social Security, he joked that we should also abolish old people, laughing along as his co-hosts riffed about killing them off, as in the cult horror film Midsommar. A House Republican nominee who uses sexually obscene words in describing children, who attacks mothers, who wants to end Social Security, who jokes about wanting to end the elderly, who, for what it's worth, are the most reliable voters in every American election, in addition to lots of racist and anti-Semitic stuff. And Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson is actively fundraising and campaigning for this guy. We can look forward to Mike Johnson being asked which of those opinions he agrees with. Herrera is running against Democrat Katie Padilla-Stout, a San Antonio mom, attorney, and former teacher. And Katie Padilla-Stout joins us now. She is the Democratic nominee for Texas's 23rd Congressional District. So, Katie, I want to understand what your conversations with voters are like right now. I think the contrast is pretty clear, just when you look at his record and his resume. But this is also a red district, and it's never easy for Democrats in that part of Texas to campaign and to connect with some of the voters there who, in recent cycles, have just been so taken away from the Democratic brand. So, for you, what has this moment went, and what do these conversations look like?
Well, these conversations are happening all over the district and every single day. People are coming up and saying, I've never voted for a Democrat, but I am excited to vote for you. Or I've never voted for a Democrat, and I don't know that I can do that, but what I'm not going to do is cast my ballot for this individual, which is also a valid choice. And so we are having these conversations with people day in and day out. Has this district been red under Tony Gonzalez? Absolutely. Have we gone back and forth between making it a blue district and a red district? Yes. But one thing we've never done is make it an extreme district. We have had Republicans like Will Hurd. We have had Democrats like Pete Gallego. We have had a moderate representation for this moderate district that has hardworking people, that is focused on family, affordability, and the American dream.
You know, one of the other dynamics in your district is, and there are people, I think, in many parts of the country who may not be aware that this is going on in Texas, but there's this whole border wall fight. Landowners in the area being asked to give up land so that border wall construction and projects and new roads and all this stuff can be built by the Trump administration. And it seems like Trump just keeps betraying some of the very people who put him and all of his allies and the people that he's endorsed into office. And I wonder, as you see just from the federal level on down to the local level, like what's going on with this guy, Herrera, if you're seeing a real enthusiasm issue, because you said it there, that it might not always be the case that someone flips back to blue from being red, but maybe they're just going to stay home.
I think that voter motivation is going to be incredibly hard for the Republican Party, especially in these midterms. I will tell you that at our rallies with Gina Hinojosa, and when we are out campaigning with other Texans, other Democrats, they are excited. They are incredibly motivated. I can't tell you how many times people will come up and say, I just cannot wait for the polls to open. Let the polls open. Let me at the polls. Let's do this. And so that enthusiasm is going to be really hard for them to overcome when they are not giving their voters or their constituents much to be excited about.
So I spelled out there that Mike Johnson is helping Herrera out. Do you feel that the National Democrats, that they've got your back right now?
I do. I feel that the National Democrats are absolutely behind us. I think that we are going to continue to gain their support and their enthusiasm for this race as we see that the motivation is building, that the energy is building. And it is not just about the 23rd. This is about the entire country. This is about having a majority to flip the House and the Senate in a comfortable way. This is a fight for all Democrats, all independents, all reasonable people who want to bring compassion and competency back to our leadership.
Katie Stout-Padilla, thank you so much. It's so good to see you. Thank you. Democratic nominee for Texas' 23rd Congressional District. Good to see you this evening, and we're going to be right back. And that is tonight's last word.